Hello and welcome to NFT Decree. I'm Barry and today we're looking at the second half of my Dark Country alpha card analysis. As I say, things are in alpha, so cards are liable to change. But the first half, where I went through all the neutrals, is up as the previous video, and today we'll be going through all the faction specific cards. So we come into here, go into the Cunning Crusaders. I will say before we start that I'm not too familiar with the factions outside Ancestral Guard. I have built a deck, they seem to be okay, but Ancestral Guard has access to some tools that the other factions don't, that make them difficult to play against. So whilst they might be balanced against each other, most decks are going to kind of falter against the AG decks. But we'll just assume that balancing is going to, come closer together, make the percentage win just a little more even across the factions. Some ideas on how to do that. If we get that far, I'll go into it and discuss it a little further. So to start with, we'll just start at the start. 1-drop Bandit. No traits. There's no bandit trait or outlaw trait or anything along those lines. But it's a 1 for 1/1, and as we discussed yesterday, you're looking for a 1-drop, at least a set of 1-drops, potentially 2 sets of 1-drops, to be consistent in finding that turn 1, making the most use of your resources, keeping the tempo up. Here, whilst we discussed vanilla 1/1s in the form of young bloods and natives, here this one has an ability, and the ability is on deploy, gain 1 Charon's Oboe. So Charon's Oboe is a 0-cost card that gets put into your hand, and when you play it, it heals your hero for 2 hit points. So that's pretty okay, but the way I've kind of put the deck together and what I'm going to be focusing on is the playing around with these Charon's Oboes. I presume that's kind of where the designers are trying to push this deck. I don't necessarily think there's a couple of decks out of each faction, but there probably is. But one of them seems more thematic than the others, and so my deck revolves around these Charon's Oboes, and I think that's really how you have to play the Crusaders if you're going to try and get any legs out of them. But the thing to think about is that once you don't always want to immediately play your Charon's Oboe. So you end up with 3, 4, 5 in your hand at a time, and when you've only got a hand size limit of 10, they can clog it up. So whenever you're reaching that hand limit, even if you don't really want to, make sure that you play 1 or 2 of those in order to free up space in your hand, either for things that are going to generate cards at the end of the turn, or to make sure you can get your draw. So if you've got a full hand size of 10 and your start of turn draw gets taken, you don't get to choose which card to discard. The card that you're drawing goes straight into your graveyard. But yeah, this is the start of the chain for the Charon's Oboe and for the Cunning Crusaders. Then you don't have a lot of choice for your 1-drops, straight into 2. Item, Assassin's Cloak, +0/+1, and gives stealth to the character on it. Now, as we've discussed, stealth doesn't work properly at the moment, and what I said about items yesterday, same thing holds true. This is not enough of a buff to be worth paying 2 for. Like, if you play this turn 1 and this turn 2, I mean, so what, right? You're never going to... It's not worth playing. It needs a buff. It needs something that's going to keep your characters alive on the defense side to make an item worth playing, and this just kind of doesn't hit the mark in that sense. So then your other 2-drop is is a creature, the Horse Thief, 2 for 1/1, but comes with the same ability as the Bandit almost, gain 1 Charon's Oboe. But if you have played 2 Charon's Oboes this turn, gain 1 more. So if you've played 2, you play this, you get 2. The only problem with that is you're never going to be getting that on turn 2. So the only way of getting an Oboe turn 1 is this. And then turn 2, at best, you could play 1 and get 1. So you either keep this in your hand for a little longer until you can get the maximum value out of it. But as I said, once those oboes start stacking up, you're going to be tight on hand space, and keeping this and 5 oboes in your hand or whatever, you're going to have to start playing them out at times when you perhaps don't want to. Or even, you want to be keeping them for a couple of specific cards that will come up later on. But this is, again, another card, so 3 of these for a Crusaders deck, if you're focusing on the oboes. Then the Slayer, or Slaver, sorry, I should say. 3 cost, 1/1, Fatal Strike, and Guardian. So Fatal Strike we've discussed. Doesn't matter what this value is if it's got Fatal Strike, unless it's muted. And Guardian means it should be able to take 2 hits. Particularly good if you're getting to choose what those 2 hits are, but it is quite weak and will die to a number of things, but it will force your opponent to expend a couple of resources into it. It's okay. Your opponent will probably throw a couple of 1/1s at it, or throw a 1/1 at it and a fireball or something. Just some kind of removal, any kind of ping to get rid of it. But it is a threat and could be considered. Doesn't fit into the oboe deck necessarily. You probably look elsewhere for your 3-drops. Then item Silver Bullet gives something else Fatal Strike, 0+1. This is worth considering, depending on how your deck's put together. Right? So let's say you've got some of those 0 drops that we talked about in the neutrals. It stayed on board. You can play this, turn 3, give something Fatal Strike. Chances are it's still going to die. Not necessarily, but chances are. But what it does is give you removal. It's almost like playing this and trading a card to remove something that's bigger. Doesn't make the cut for my deck, but could be worth something. Could be worth trying, particularly if there's a lot of large monsters that your opponent can get out for free. Something like the Owl Bear, for example, might come down turn 2 on your opponent's turn. Then you would have to have gone first, and you would, whatever's out, you'd play this and you'd be able to kill it. So that could be an out there. There's not much else in the 3-drop range that would be able to take out an Owl Bear and a 1-er. So depending on the meta, could see play. Then Escaped Convict, cost 3, 2/1, mute enemy creature. That's kind of fine. I mean, the stats are a bit weak. The mute ability is good for some things. Turns off Last Word, turns off those Dark Cultists ticking up every turn. There's other options. I don't want to keep going back into the neutrals for things that we've looked at, but if we go back to this as a 3-drop, you've got the same stats: 3, 2/1, deploy, mute target creature, could be your own, and Frenzy. So just strictly better, and the cultist key tag keyword or trait, whatever you want to call it, is kind of better. I don't see any reason why this couldn't be buffed or does something specific for the Crusaders. So instead of Frenzy, again, maybe gain an oboe, just something that plays into the sort of strengths of the deck, particularly as it should always be that the faction cards do something better within their faction than the neutrals. The neutrals should really be the backup cards. Make sure that the factions as a whole are roughly balanced, but some people pay more for certain abilities that are in faction. So let's say Crusaders was the mute faction, right? And this was a 1/1 mute. The other faction shouldn't have it. They should stick with a 3-drop, which the Fanatic there, so 3, 2/1 mute. Just something that's slightly worse or maybe slightly different, and this has more of a theme. So at the moment, this could use a buff, something faction specific. Then you'll see that the cultist tags are cross faction. Some of these tags are cross faction. The assassin, 4 cost, 5/1, comes out with stealth, and when it kills When this kills a creature, it gains stealth. 4 for 5, but and it comes out with stealth. If stealth worked and it could survive a turn, might be worth it. At the moment, it doesn't work properly, like I say. So, unless you're going to build a cultist Crusader deck, there wouldn't be a huge call for putting this guy in, I wouldn't have thought. Another 4-drop Bank Robber, 3/1 Frenzy, and whenever you play a Charon's Obol, this goes back to hand. So, I've played a few times, and I think, having the Bank Robber's fine. 4 cost for a 3/1 Frenzy. Yeah, that's fine. He's not going to survive the Frenzy attack because he's only got 1 hit point. If this was 2 hit points, and you could use him to come in, get rid of a 1-drop, play an Obol to heal, bring him back to hand, so he's safe for a turn, that might be okay. As it is, the Obols tend to be the way it would have to work at the moment is you swing to the hero and then pick him back up so he's safe. But the amount of tempo you're losing by not having your 4-drop on the board is quite significant. So it could use a sort of second functionality, getting rid of a one attack creature, for example, just by giving it a slight health buff up to 2 there. And again, most things can take out a 2. So I don't think it'd be too overpowered there. It just makes it a bit more flexible in the sort of 4-drop slot. Then you got Vengeful Soul, 4-drop, 1/5, so good defense there. And the reason you want this one to stick around is because at the end of turn, gain 1 Charon's Obol. So this is a staple for the Crusader deck, particularly the Obol decks, and 3 of them, and you want to get them out and putting Obols in your hand. If you can keep them out for a couple of turns, definitely worth it. You can also take a swing at some sort of weak creatures with low attack, because the 5 health is pretty reasonable against pretty much anything except AG. Then Crow Queen, 4 cost, 3/4, so okay stats there. But on deploy, give friendly creature +1/+0, and then when that creature kills, Crow Queen gains stealth. So if stealth worked, this is worth looking at. You give it to something that's already on the board, maybe your Horse Thief. It swings in as a 2/1, having done its thing, getting you cards early on. Swings in as 2/1, trades up, ideally. Then the Crow Queen gains stealth for a turn, and then next turn it can swing without having been targeted the turn before. So again, once stealth works, some of these cards are going to go up in value. At the moment, not ideal because the stealth can still be targeted by spells, and a lot of things that are going to take out a 4-drop immediately are a spell. Is a spell? Are a spell. Then on to Scarecrow, 4-drop, 1/6. Mute every creature attacked by Scarecrow. So again, this is okay-ish if it didn't take a turn to go off. You drop this, whatever you're wanting to mute. This has to be down before the thing you want to mute is down, really, because if your opponent's particularly worried about something that's going to be triggering every turn, they're going to do their best to get rid of this. And 6 is okay, like it's an okay range, okay health. It makes it a reasonable investment to get rid of, but they could also put down they could mute the Scarecrow for that to not work. Again, I don't actually think mute works properly in all occasions, but it definitely stops some of the common cards with effects that go off every turn. Then the Devil's Ring item, 4 cost, +6/+0, and destroy the wielder at the end of your turn and put this back to your hand. So this is actually okay. Again, it works like what I say kind of items should do. It puts something in danger zone. You pay 4, you trade out with a bandit, or your Horse Thief, becomes a 7/1. Yeah, it's going to die, but you can take out something that's a high value target for your opponent, something with sort of 6-7 health left. Now if it dies, it doesn't come back to your hand, but if it's still alive at the end of the turn, then this card will come back and the creature that was on gets killed. So something with a higher health if you want to keep recurring this, but what then you'll need is something that's going to spit out creatures every turn for you to put this on. Then the Preacher, 4 cost 2/2, pretty low stats, but every time you play a Charon's Obol, gains +1/+1. Now you can actually pump out 4 or 5 in a turn, so if you get this down on the turn where you're going to do that, but it doesn't help you gain Obols, and usually you're going to be spending your Obols on something else, or triggering it on a turn when you play a different card. This might be okay. Like I say, if you end up with a whole bunch of Obols in your hand, and sometimes you have to get rid of them, perhaps around about turn 4. If that's the case, you put this down, you play 2. You've got a 4/4 creature for 4 that your opponent has to deal with, or it's just going to get bigger turn after turn, but not made the cut in my deck. Then we've got the Gambler, another 4 drops, a lot of 4 drops in here. 3/3 creature, and you've got a 50% chance to get 2 Obols. Now, a coin flip here, it's thematic, right? So Gambler, to get it. The only reason I don't really like it, I've discussed randomness before. It's not great. If it gave you 1 and you had a 50% chance to get another one, that would be decent in my mind. And in fact, if that was recurring, if it was 50% chance, then you get another 50% chance and another 50% chance, that'd be okay with the guaranteed one. When you get the 2, feels good. When you don't get the 2, feels bad. And it's a little difficult to get. This is like your top end of getting Obols. And so when it doesn't go off, then you're kind of stuck with a sort of low number, and you really need sort of more guaranteed getting copies of it to make the deck work. Although that said, there's a few other things that the deck needs. The deck needs a bit more support. The Charon's Obol deck, just to get some value. Like this is there, right? This is something that does it. Maybe something. I mean, that's not really support. But again, that's another 4 drop. It's all 4 drops. You need something here. Maybe even if this guy was same as this. When you play Charon's Obol, mute enemy creature, right? So you put him out. You can get off maybe 2 mutes in a turn. Don't know why. I mean, it's rare when you'd want to, but it's an option. Just needs a bit more support in general. But this card is in my deck because I need to get the two Obols off the deploy, and like I say, when it happens, feels good. When it doesn't happen, feels bad. So Pandiera. If anybody's actually speaks Spanish, then I apologise. 5/1/1. And on deploy, mute a creature and copy its stats. Now again, this doesn't seem to work as written. It's should be mute creature, copy its base stats. So if something's been buffed by an item, by an ability, anything along those lines, you're only going to get the base numbers. So something like when I played it on, where's that cougar thing? This mountain lion. And it was like a 6/7, and you play it on it, and you get a 1/1, and you're like, oh, well, that's less impressive. So again, change the wording on that, copy its stats. Could be okay. Mute something, copy its current stats would be better. It's not brilliant though. I can't remember if it's made it into my deck or not. but it's interesting. Keep it as it is. Right, Witch Hunter, 5 cost, 4/4. That's fine. Last words don't trigger. So similar to the, I'm just going to have to go back to the neutrals, right? So similar to this guy, Fatal Strikes don't work. Again, it's sort of checks and balances. If last word becomes something crazy, like if there's a last word deck and you can put this guy in to help counter it, then got a place. The last word's not really that much of a problem by the time you're at the 5-drop area. So, doesn't have a space at the moment, but could have a space in the future. Here we've got Dark Rider, 5 cost Undead, 5/2. And when you play Charon's Oboe, gain Stealth. So again, if Stealth worked, that might be okay. Get him down, keep him safe for a turn, except against board wipes. Then swing next turn for 5. That'd be okay. That's the kind of support that would work for a Charon's Oboe deck, but because Stealth, you can still be targeted by fireballs and activated abilities. It's not worth it at the moment. Then this Cursed Whip item, 5 cost, so +4 +0 and deploy, and +4 +0 and deploy, gain 2 Charon's Oboe. So this is 3 off, maybe 2 off in the deck. Getting the guaranteed oboes is good. Plus, again, it's that trick factor of being able to take out something your opponent thought was going to be safe for a turn. They've spent all their resources on something, and you can come in and wipe it out in a winner. Perhaps for one of your small guys or something. But really, it's the oboes that's the star of the show there. Then Diligence Robbers, 6 cost, 4/2 frenzy. That's fine. I think we had a look at some sort of frenzies there. Now the additional 2 on that's not necessary. The additional health compared to the cow, burning cow here. So 5 cost, 4/1 frenzy. So that's a 6 cost, 4/2 frenzy. You're never really going to want to be swinging into something that's only got 1 life. If you're going in for the 4 damage. So either I would say bump that up to a 5, which would be worth it. And keep it 5/1. You can keep most of the frenzies with 1 health. Reckless Abandon, they'll charge in. Or maybe it needs to do something else as well for that cost, because obviously you're paying 1 more than you can get out of neutral. And like I said at the start, or early doors at least, your factions should have their own identity. They should have their own. There should be stuff in faction that the other factions don't have access to that it does better than the neutrals. And at the moment, the neutrals themselves tend to outpace a lot of the faction cards in what they do. Bounty Hunter, 6 cost, 1/5, and when you deploy, you get +2 +0 for every oboe you've played in the game. So this can come out pretty strong. Very easy to have played 4 oboes by the time this is able to hit the board. 4 of those would make it a 9/5 creature, be an immediate threat your opponent had to take care of. Definitely worth playing. Probably 3 off, just in part because there's not that much support otherwise, and this kind of definitely has a place. Then Dynamite, 7 cost item, +4 +2, and destroy a random enemy creature with Fortify. The +4 +2 is actually pretty good, and the ability is not bad, but oftentimes you could whiff, right? There's decks that don't have any Fortify in them, and the things that are fortified are low value targets that you could take care of another way. But if you're struggling for cards to put in, this could be okay. Again, it's the +4 you're mostly looking for, but that +2 will do a little bit to help keep whoever you play it on alive. Then Gunslinger, 8 cost, 4/6. So this is the card that you want to save up for and save all your oboes for, because there's no board wipes out of this faction apart from Gunslinger. So you drop the Gunslinger, you play 4 oboes from hand, you wipe out their board, and then you've got a decent threat, particularly if you can generate more oboes. in future turns. So this is again, the fact that it's 8 cost means you might not want to see it typically or super early, and you're only going to need one of them down, maybe 2, so you might only want to have 2 of them, but for consistency's sake you probably want 3. Then there's an Undead Coffin Man, 9 cost 6/6, so stats are okay, little pricey. But deploy, return all your cards that died this turn to your hand and set their cost to 1. So, there's definite times when this would be good. Like, late game, you've got a board, your opponent does a board wipe. Actually, no, that's not that good because it's that turn, so on your turn. So you would have to swing in. You would have to have a big turn of swinging at your opponent, taking down their board, then drop this, and then still be able to pay for all the cards that were wiped out. So let's say there was 4 cards gone. It's going to be, turn 13 by the time this is really getting you value. I mean, the cost stays at 1 in their hand, so you can get them again down next turn. But in terms of a trading, tempo swing where you can go all out on your guys to wipe out their board and still have a presence, bit expensive and a little bit conditional. Might be, if this worked, return all your cards that died last turn, so on your opponent's turn, to your hand and set their cost to 1. I think that would be better. Would certainly help stand up against some of the board wipes on AG, the Ancestral Guard side, and be worth playing at that point. Not made the cut for me, but you could consider it depending on how you want to build your deck. Particularly Frenzy, right? Let's say you had a whole bunch of Frenzy, but if you had Frenzy down, the cost, you couldn't afford it all. So either this needs to be cheaper if it's on your turn, or it needs to bring back all the people that died on your opponent's turn. Now the Beastman, 9, 5, 7, decent, and all other friendly creatures deal double damage. So this is potential for a finisher. If you can keep a board down, drop this before you swing. You can get twice as much damage down as your opponent thought. Now that's particularly good if let's say you drop this. Let's say it was turn 14. You drop this. Suddenly that's a +8 on something that's swinging. And if you've got multiple other creatures, you can easily do a third of your opponent's life in the turn. The real trick, of course, would be surviving till turn 14 with a CO deck, but it could be done, I guess. Then Wild Bunch, 15 cost, huge, 10/10. Okay, that's kind of the top end of where creatures tap out. But every time you play Sharon's Oboe, reduce, spelt wrong, this creature's cost by 1. Cost belonging to the creature, should there be an apostrophe in there as well? Yeah, this is fine. 2 of these. You don't want them clogging up your hand. Again, the risk with the whole deck is that you've got a whole bunch of oboes in your hand that you don't want to play just yet. Either you've not been hit, and so you're not getting the benefit of the healing, or you've not got anything that triggers off it. What I'd kind of like to see across the faction is a few more things that can give oboes, and a few more things that can trigger off them. So like I say, this guy, if he was mute enemy creature, when you play Sharon's Oboe, mute enemy creature. If stealth worked properly, you'd have a couple more options. This is fine. This would be fine, like I say, if stealth worked. This needs to do something a little better. Maybe that could just generate one oboe for you. Maybe there's something that could do targeted damage. So you see a recurring theme where I complain a little bit about how Ancestral Guard are the only people with access to board wipes. If there was a 6-drop something, right? So let's go into the 6-drop, maybe a 7-drop range since there's no creatures, and it was every time you play a Sharon's Oboe, deal 2 damage at random, or deal 2 targeted damage. I don't know what it'd be worth. Worth playing around. Then this faction could definitely be a contender. At the moment, you've got nothing apart from your Gunslinger and 4 oboes that's going to really help wipe out the board. And the other things that I spoke about are a bit too expensive. So, something to think about. I mean, I'm assuming the devs are ever even going to watch this, but that's how I would change this faction slightly. And you see there's much fewer cards in each faction, so there's only 8, 16, 24, 25 cards in the faction. So you still have to go into the neutrals to build up your deck. Things that are, we might as well just look at my deck since we're here. So, because of the whip, that's in part why I've got the cheap young recruits in. Now I have said I've moved away from young recruits for a couple of decks, but this one I just want the bodies. The more bodies I can have down, the better. Then you've got the bandits for your 1-drop. Let me get back to that. So bandits are the 1-drop, horse thieves the 2-drop, fanatics, which is the frenzy, just because it's kind of better than what you're getting. Vile recruiter, that's another cultist. Generate 2 to hand. Again, I'm just trying to generate some board advantage, making sure there's somebody on the board for when I can play the cursed whip. In there, then gambler. So as I said, it's in there because it's one of the only ways to get kind of two oboes at a time. It's not brilliant, but it works. Like it's fine. Like it's fine. The offering, that's the draw 2 cards. Definitely need that. Vengeful Souls, definitely need them. They're gonna, if you can keep them on board for a couple of turns, that's really going to generate your obos for you. Then the whip. So the whip, you could take the ring, right? But the whip's better because of the oboe generation. Then I put in blacksmith. Now blacksmith's pretty crap, right? It generates a fork. Where is he? Is he in here? Blacksmith, so put a knife and fork into your hand, so +1 defense, +1 offense. For some reason you can only play the defense on the turn he comes out. Again, I think that's just a bug. I probably shouldn't have him in here for 2 reasons. One, he puts 2 cards in your hand which you don't want. But what he was really designed just to try and keep other characters alive, in order to have time to put the whip down. Then we've got Brainwash, which is 6 cost, destroy a creature, move it over. Broodmother, get some of those. Again, it's all card generation, because these don't have huge amount. These decks don't have a huge amount of draws. Just having something that you're able to play is often the challenge in a lot of these other factions. So this is Broodmother, 4/4, get 2 little spider things to your hand that have Fatal Strike. Gunslinger, this is kind of your get out of jail free card. Play this, drop 4 oboes, 5 oboes, wipe their board. Treant is the root everything for a turn here. Again, you this is a deck that does want to delay until you've got the Gunslinger, until you've got more oboes in hand, so that's why that's in there. And then a couple of the Wild Bunch. You don't want more than that because you'll struggle to... again, if it clogs up your hand, if you've got 3 of these and you're not playing oboes, and it just sucks. So this deck works okay. Definitely could be better. I should probably get rid of the blacksmiths, put something more constructive in. Actually, why... take them out. I don't know why I don't have these guys in. I should definitely have some of them. And can I swap anything else? Maybe there's just no real advantage to putting these guys in over the whatchamacallit, the bull thing, the burning cow. I guess what I wouldn't mind is a couple of these in here. So let's assume that I don't need these young recruits, and I put 2 of those in. And let's assume that I don't need these vile recruiters, which will let me put in a couple of banshees. And then let's assume let's assume I definitely don't need 3 Broodmothers. But I probably don't need any Broodmothers. It's a good card, but I think there's probably a couple of other things that would be better. I need some sort of targeted removal. This guy's pretty good. And it would give me a totems can't attack though. One of them in for a board wipe. Still got 3 slots left. If I'm not playing things, I guess again Owlbear's probably the rounds it out. Now this doesn't have a strong Crusader theme anymore then. I mean it didn't really have one before. There needs to be more support for the oboe deck, right? So there's my deck. 3 bandits, 3 horse thieves, 2 fanatics, 3 gamblers, 3 offerings, 3 vengeful souls, 2 banshees, 3 cursed whips, 2 hanged ladies, 2 bounty hunters, 3 brainwash, 1 sinful shepherd, 3 gunslingers, 3 owlbears, 2 tree ants, and 2 wild bunch. So if you want to have a go with that deck, the sequencing, like I'll try and get games in with them, but the sequencing is to build up a hand off oboes until you've taken a bit of damage, get the gunslinger out, wipe the board, and then just try and push through for the win, which is easier said than done, but is what it is. Okay, so that is the first faction done. Let's move on to the Resolute Rangers. So the Resolute Rangers are the good guys, right? So the cowboys and the sheriffs and stuff of the world that we're in, right? So the Weird West that we're in. And I've gone for a sort of fortify deck, card generation deck a little bit. And it seems to be okay-ish. Again, you can win some games, but AG's just going to have an early... Ancestral Guard is going to have an easy time against every other faction as things stand. So your 1-drop here is a barrel, 1/2 fortify, really good. A lot of your opponent's 1-drops are 1/1s. You can get and take 2 hits, and it lets you could protect your 2-drop later on. Then the double quotes. This is also quite good. The fortify deck can be quite strong. You can have a bunch of things out that have fortify, maybe 3 or 4. So actually for 2 this could be a +4/+4, or at least a +3/+3. It only triggers, so this isn't a constant effect, this is a one-time trigger effect. So on the turn you play it, that's when it's going to do the +1/+1. So make sure you've got everything out that you can with fortify before you play it. One of the few items that's probably worth it, even with the conditional nature of it. Duelist, absolute vanilla, 2/2, fine. Item, axe gun, +4, and guardian. So the +4 is the main thing there, but actually guardian can be beneficial. Just being able to take 2 hits is a pain in the ass for somebody trying to get rid of you, or get rid of your creatures. Then bartender, 3 for a 4/4. Now that's already above the curve, right? So 3 for a 4/4 is good, just straight up good. And then at the end of your turn, put a random beverage into your hand. And the beverages are things like +1, water, I think it's +1 defense, and beers +1 offense, and stuff like that. I'm not sure how many different beverages there are. But this card, definitely 3 off, keeps your hand up. So we spoke in the last one about the difference between card advantage and virtual card advantage. Certainly the virtual card advantage from the cards you're getting here is quite low. But, options are options, right? If you get this guy down on turn 3, this guy's still alive, he's taking 1 hit, your opponent's got another 1/1 to finish him off. You are able to get another turn to buff him back up to 2. Conditionally good, and it just keeps your hand full, and they're free. They're 0 cost cards, so you can play them at any time. Then the sleeve gun, 3 cost for +1/+1, so that's not ideal. The deployability though, deal 1 damage to a random enemy, that can be quite good. If the opponent's only got one person, you know who it's going to hit. That's fine. I mean, I would rather that was targeted. If it was targeted, this would probably make the cut for at least one off, 2 off, to deal with sort of early threats. There's a lot of things that only have 1 hit point and high attacks, so this could be good if this was targeted. You can also set up these, right? Let's say your opponent's got three bad guys. If you can kill 2 of them and there's only 1 left, then you know who it's going to hit. So this is okay. The items here are stronger than probably the other factions, and have more of a chance of seeing play. But they should still be, if the items are revised and you look at how items work overall, definitely come back and have a look at these. I don't think they're perfect, but I think they're reasonable. Undertaker, 3 cost, 2/3. Okay, reasonable. Last word, put a shovel into your hand. Put a shovel into your hand. I forget what the shovel does. I think it's like +1, +0 or something. Again, it keeps up your card advantage, but quite low quality from your virtual card advantage. But I did start out with a couple of these in my deck. I'm not sure if I kept them. Is okay, but there's other things for 3 cost, the Fanatic or whatever, probably better off with that than this. Then the Trapper, 2/5, so the 5 hit points is pretty decent, and it can go up to a 4/5, so that would be a pretty, a 4/5 pretty decent. So +2, +0 against beasts. Depends if beasts get out of hand, but there are a lot of beast splashes in the other factions, so that can be a meta call as to whether or not this guy makes it in. Town Drunk, 4 cost for a 4/2. 2 is quite weak, but when you deploy him, you get a random drink to your hand, so that could make him a 4/3, could make him a 5/3, but you don't even have to play the drink on him. If you get a +1, so because it's random, you don't know what you're getting, fine. I've discussed already, don't particularly like it. But the ability to just do 1 extra damage on something else, or stay alive 1 extra, 1 extra hit point, just to anything that messes with your opponent's maths and what they were thinking of doing for their next turn, is good. Shotgun item, 4 cost, +3, +0. Pricey, and root. Now I'm going to again assume that is root target creature. This could be decent again. Just if you're slowing things down. Now there's not a massive reason to stall out of these guys, but they do have some reasonable cards that could be worth slowing your opponent down for. And again, the +3, just the surprise element of being able to take something out. So you let's say that doesn't even kill their big guy. You can stall out, you can root him for a turn, and you can kill whatever else is on the board. Then you got another cultist, sharpshooter, Mish Moneypenny. 4 cost, 3/3, a bit underneath, but if you're holding an item that costs 5 or more, summon a copy of this creature. So this is interesting in that it gives your opponent some insight into your hand, right? So if you play this and something comes out, and like a copy comes out, then it knows that you're holding a 5+ cost item. So we can have a look at them after, but the Sheriff's Gun there could be one of them. So 4 for 2 3/3 creatures. Again, against anything apart from board wipes, it's not bad. But it does mean that the conditional effect of having to both put 5 cost items in, and I think you'll see that as we go up the costs, the items get less beneficial as some of the cheaper ones we've got here. If this was holding an item that costs, just holding an item might be worth playing. There could be, if you want to take the Rangers down the item faction, if they wanted to be the faction that used guns, you had the ability to get a few bodies, round up a posse, arm them, and then swing. That's something to think about. But this is conditional. I think I started with it, and I'm not sure if I ended up with it, but we'll see how it goes. Then Gunsmith, 0/5. Your items cost 1 less. Now, how this works, I don't know if that's a numbo, right? Let's say your items cost 1 less. Chances are this is going to come out with a 4 from your deck while he's in play. And I don't know if this is a permanent feature as well. So this might not work together, which is why it's probably... I'm going to think the way that the game's coded, from what I've seen, this wouldn't work together, right? If you had this guy in play and this was a permanent effect, this would come out of your deck as a 4, and then he wouldn't trigger from your Sheriff's Gun, which leaves you with very few items that cost 5 or more, effectively just your big card there. So something to think about, and if they, if the developers want to push these guys down the route of, like I say, round up a posse, equip them with guns, and shoot, then they need to think about how those combos are going to come together. Then Zombie Train, 4 cost, 0/8. Fine. When you play an item, deal 1 damage to all enemies' creatures. So this is quite good, and you want cheap items to play off the back of it. Again, this is kind of your board wipe, much like the Gunslinger and the Crusaders. You play this, but then you've got to play down. You got to find where your cheap items are. So this medicine shield, Mish Money Penny, the medicine shield, cheap, but doesn't really do much for you. The pipe tomahawk, the war shield. Now the war shield might have a space in that deck if they can really, rally around items being a thing, right? So the fortify effect, fortify items, should come out the Rangers deck, and could be something that would work. At the moment, it's difficult. There's not enough variety. There's not enough choice, and there's not enough synergies to really make this sing. Particularly because it's got the additional cost of whatever. So, even if you got 4, it'd be turn 8, you'd play this and you play two cost items for a 2 board wipe. It's expensive. But it should stay around for a turn or 2, and pinging 1 damage can be reasonable. Sheriff's Gun, 5 cost, plus 4, plus 2. I prefer it if that was more. For 5 costs you can get a creature that does more, but the surprise element of having 4 more damage than your opponent thought counts for something. And then one of the few things that he's going to trigger off. Cannon, 5 cost, 5/5, so just your standard curve there. And when you deploy it, deal 5 damage to 2 random enemies. So this is mandatory 3-off, one of the few ways of keeping the opponent's board down. Dealing 5 damage is nothing to sniff at. I mean, if this was already out, you play this, you play a 1-drop, you can get 6 damage, and 6 damage is the kill threshold for quite a lot of bigger creatures. So this is pretty decent, and you definitely want as many of them in your deck as you can fit. Then Barricade, 5/0/8, so slightly stronger than the Train. It's got Fortify and Spell Immunity. So this is actually pretty worthwhile. Your opponent being able to take out an 8 cost easily, particularly one that's not really going to damage them. Do they spend their Brainwash on getting rid of it? Do they, how else are they going to kill it? Fortify being an ability that's got some synergies within the Rangers deck, and Spell Immunity just to help prevent, in fact, you'd be immune to Brainwash there, right? So they're going to have to swing into it. So this is a good card within the faction. If I had a little bit more support and synergies, would work well. The Gatling team, 6 cost, 5/6, and when a friendly creature dies, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. This is good. You want those in there as well. What you're really hoping for is to have a whole bunch of fortified creatures down, including these barricades, so they can't target this guy directly, and they're having to chew through your fortified creatures all the time, taking pings from this. So this is really how, that was the thing that I saw that I liked most out of the Rangers deck. There is some synergies. I think it could be stronger. Doctor, 6 cost, 4/4, restore 2 health to all friendly creatures. Little conditional, you're going to want some high health creatures down for it. If this was give 2 health to all friendly creatures, right, so if they hadn't even been damaged, they got plus 2 health, that would be better. because oftentimes your opponent doesn't leave many things damaged without killing it. I mean, yes, there is, but not always. So if this was add to health to all friendly creatures, then this would be better. Then Mare, 6 cost, 5/6, reasonable, and your other minions have Fortify. Now this one's interesting. I mean, you want the Fortify, but you're going to have to sequence it right. You're going to want a board full of things. You're going to want this guy to come down, and then this guy to come down. And that ends up being very expensive to play. So, there's no way of cheating things out in this game. Some other card games, there's ways of cheating things out, like quite high value things come out for quite cheap. This game has not got those kind of combos, those kind of reducers in quite the same way. So sequencing is important. If this comes down when this is out, then people are going to target this first, right? Because then that will have Fortify, and they get their choice of things that are fortified. So this is okay. It's an interesting ability. I wouldn't necessarily change it. It could be, and again, this only triggers when it comes down. This should be deploy. Give your other minions Fortify, because other things that come down after he's in play, it's not a continuous effect. There doesn't seem to be any kind of continuous effects in this game yet. So the way things read aren't always 100% how things work. But yeah, you want Fortify, so that's fine. Cowboy, 6 cost, 2/3, deploy, equip a random item from your deck. So this is the kind of combos that are worth having, right? So let's say, you could quite easily just have this guy and this one-off Burning Colts. So when you play him, this comes out, but you run the risk of having drawn this before you draw him. So what you really want is a minimum of number of cowboys equals number of items minus 1. So if you got 3 cowboys, you got 4 items. If you got, because when you draw the cowboy and when you draw your items in a 40 card deck, I need to do the maths properly, but that would be a reasonable ratio for me. You might want to even go up. Maybe it's 5 items for 3 cowboys, 4 for 2, 3 for 1, just to increase the consistency there. But yeah, like getting some of these out for free should be fine. Like even if you just got axe guns in there, that would work. The synergies as a whole aren't perfect, right? So because there's not a huge number of 5 cost items to come out for this guy, and the reducer doesn't really work with this guy. I don't know, something to think about. There is definitely something there with items. I just don't think it's quite there. So this guy, Easy Rider, 4/3, 6 cost. Got Fortify as well, which is what you want. And last word, summon 2 barrows. So if you remember, barrows are these things. So even if your opponent kills this, then they've still got 2 barrows to get through as well. So this is definitely sort of 3 off. Really helps kind of get the synergies going with the Gatling team if you can keep them on board. And you can keep them on board against most things apart from AG. Butcher, 7 cost, 115, so huge defense there. And each time this creature takes damage, it gets +1, +0. So as you start taking damage, it's going to end up being like a 2, 2/12, 3/9, 4/6. And you're hopefully getting some kills off for that. If you're, if you can stay in charge, if you've got the Fortify stuff out, and you can choose to swing into 1-cost creatures to start building up your attack without losing much life, and that could be worth it. And actually combos relatively well with this thing. So the spell and power, 7 cost, +0, +7, so that's again huge. Gives you Guardian, so you can take a hit for nothing, and Fortify. So then your opponent has to hit this. They have to be swinging in at this if you've got no other Fortify cards. Last thing in the... Is this the last one? Yeah, then you're into the Undead Horde. So here you've got Burning Colts, item, 8 cost. It's unique. You can only have 1 in your deck. But +8, +0. So this is actually... this could be a finisher. As long as you've got bodies on the board, your opponent's like, well, he can only hit me for you know, the 4 that he's got down, maybe another 4. You drop this, and suddenly you're doing a lot of damage. The additional ability, when the wielder attacks, deal 1 damage to all enemies. It's a little bit weak for the cost. If this was 2 damage, I'd be happier, because often the board, you know, there's a board of weenies on the other side and they potentially have 2 hit points. If you're paying 8, that's about where you want the board wipe costs to be. So like I said, it's the same thing, like, you know, board wipe 4 for this and then 2 of 2. That would do 2 damage to their board. This does 2 damage every time something dies your side. If this was 2 damage, just to give some of the factions different ways of catching up when they fall behind. So those are the cards. Let's look at my Rangers deck again. It's not probably very good. Let's have a think. So I think I should probably move away from the 0 costs the more I've played here. So Agonizing Follower. What faction's that in? Only costs 1. It must be neutral. Agonizing Follower. Here. Yep. So this is fine. Keep this in. The Fortify ability is good. And here it means that whatever 1-drop you've got coming down is decent. Cultist Adept, I probably don't need them. Right. So I've already got 6 1-drops. So let's not focus too much on that. And I've got 2 of the double Colts. Like I say, you don't need 3. You don't need to see them particularly early. You want them, 3-4 turns in once you've got a bunch of Fortify creatures on board. The Liquidator, again, Fortify, Fatal Strike. The only downside to having other Fortify creatures is they can attack the other ones instead of this guy, but as long as they're not attacking him, then you get to choose who you attack on your turn, so that's good to have there. Then the Renegade, a lot of this is designed to survive board wipes, so like when this guy dies, gets a Cultist Adept, which is just a 2-1, but it keeps somebody on the board as an option there. Then the Sleeve Gun, I've got 2 of them. Again, you might want 3, but 2 just to ping some weak enemies early on's quite reasonable. And if nothing else, it also pings something that you could hit with the Banshee. The Offering, that's your draw 2. You need 3 of those in your deck. The Barricades, I might up that to 3, having spoken about it. Cannons, can only have 1, unfortunately. If there was 3 of those, that would be better. Brainwash for taking out those big creatures, they're easy way to deal with. The Easy Rider, 3 of those. The Gatling Team, 3 of those. You want to see them, and you might want to see multiple of them at some point. The Mayor, put him in. He's, maybe I don't need mayors, but I don't know. Maybe I take the mayors out and I put a couple of cowboys in. And then I put in what else would be good for those last couple of slots? The Bartender's not bad for his cost, right? I mean, he's 4/4, keeps things in your hand. Sure, let's throw in a couple of them, and that will be it. So the deck here: 3 Agonizing Followers, neutral; 3 Barrels; 2 Double Colts; 3 Liquidators, neutral; 2 Bartenders; 2 Renegades, neutral; 2 Sleeve Guns; 3 the Offering; 2 the Banshees, neutral; 3 Barricades; 1 Cannon, because that's all you can have, otherwise I'd have 3. 3 Brainwash, take out some of the bigger things; 2 Cowboys, there should be enough items in the deck that they're fine for; 3 Easy Riders, because when they die they spawn barrels; 3 Gatling Teams, because as your opponent chews through your Fortify creatures, you want to be pinging them for damage; Burning Coats, that's a one-off; and the Owl Bears just for big bodies to deal with. I mean, I guess you don't necessarily need them, but in addition, even if you don't see them early, if he's stocking up your hand with random drinks, then he's going to come out for pretty cheap. Right, so that's the first 2 factions. I'm going to make a second video for the other two factions, but I will wrap this one up here and say this is NFT Decree signing off.